Hello, Pokejar. My name is King Pickle, and welcome to another TV show review. Today we will be tackling the first season of Loki, and I apologize ahead of time if this is the most rambling, nonsensical review I've ever given. This is all off the cuff, about 20 minutes after watching Loki, and after watching season finale, and I really just want to kind of get into it. If you want just my overall thoughts before everything gets kind of messy, I thought it was great. I thought it was wonderful. I think I might have liked it. Yeah, I think I liked it better than WandaVision. I think WandaVision complements this show very well. WandaVision is a much more less connected to all the other MCU stuff. It's just kind of trying to tell some little story about Wanda and her tackling grief and all that stuff. While this is tackling much more broader ideas like free will and time, and everything being inevitable, always. And I also think this does a excellent job setting up for the next phase of Marvel. And this is the first time since the end of Endgame, or maybe I really enjoyed Far From Home. But this is the first time since Endgame that I'm really looking forward to the future of the more broader MCU, because so far, Falcon and WandaVision and Spider-Man have been less connected to the greater MCU than we're kind of used to, which I like that as a nice break, but now I really want to just see what's next for the entire just universe in general. And the weirdest thing is that this is making me excited for a Doctor Strange movie, and also an Ant-Man movie, which that's gotta be a feat. So, a lot of times when I do these reviews, I try and go over smaller stuff like acting, or cinematography, or music, or whatever, before I get into the more important meat and potatoes like the plot and the characters and the themes. But I feel like to even say anything about this show, I have to give a quick little plot overview, as quick as you can for a show like this. So remember when Loki escaped with the Tesseract in Endgame? Well, he gets kidnapped after he does that by the Time Police, because what's supposed to happen is he's supposed to go to jail or go to Asgard like he does in Avengers, but instead he steals Tesseract, and that creates essentially a shift in the timeline. They broadly went over it in Endgame. This is kind of more expanding upon that, and now the Time Police are grabbing him to kill him, and we set it so that he doesn't get away with the Tesseract, and the timeline that's just keeps on going as it's supposed to. But they make a deal that if he can help the Time Police capture another different version of Loki, who also created a new timeline and so on, the one from the Time Police, then he cannot die. And he agrees to do this because he's shown, the rest of his life. Because remember, this is a Loki that's only been around from whatever to the first Avengers movie. So he's shown everything that happens, where he dies in Thor: The Dark World, and then he comes back and he befriends Thor, and then he dies in Infinity War. So that gives him kind of a change of heart. But then, instead of actually helping the Time Police, he instead follows the variant of Loki, who is a female Loki named Sylvie, and they devise a plan to destroy the Time Police, because Sylvie has been on the run since she was a little girl. Essentially, all they gotta do is go find the Timekeeper Time Wizards, and then just kill them. Bop, boop, beep, easy as that. And it's also established pretty early on that the Time Police, they have these little sticks that the person you poke them with, they fucking disintegrate. So that's cool. So yeah, they make it to the Timekeeper Wizards, and they fight them, and Sylvie chops off one of their heads, only to reveal that they're simply an android. So it's like, well, crap. Also, Owen Wilson is in the show, and he's kind of like a disappointed dad, because he doesn't want to kill Loki, but he's mad that he keeps on, rebelling. But then the Owen Wilson, he figures out that the big reveal. It's that everybody who's working for the Time Police is also a variant. So they're going around killing other variants, which isn't cool. Because it's like you're killing yourself, essentially. You're you've been going after these variants your whole professional career, but you're also a variant. So he, understandably, just turns on the Time Police, but it's too late because he's stabbed. And then Loki is also stabbed. So presumably, Owen Wilson and Loki have just died. And but it's revealed that they're not actually dead. We'll get to that in a little bit. But I like this little reveal, because as we all know, Tom Hiddleston is probably won't be in the MCU for a very much longer, or at least that's what I thought going into this series, and it looked like Sylvie. All of that could be the perfect replacement for the new Loki and the MCU, and Owen Wilson is just a side character. So I for a second, just believed that Loki was genuinely dead. But no, it turns out he's not. It turns out he was sent to a place called the Void, and that's what happens when you get poked with a little stick. You're sent to, almost the end of time. Because if all of the variants are at the end of time, then they can't mess with the timeline if they're at the end of it, you know? That makes sense. There's a lot of cool ways they use time in this show. I know time travel is seen as really finicky, doesn't always work in shows, but I think it's really well used in this show. Is a very vital part of it. Yeah, that makes sense. If I was had to throw a bunch of variants to a place, or I would throw them to the end of the timeline where they can't mess up the timeline, throwing everything presumably into chaos. And this is where Loki meets up with a bunch of other variants of Loki. And episode 5 might be my favorite episode of the series, because there's Old Man Loki, there's Child Loki, there's Black Loki, and then there's Alligator Loki. And the funniest thing, and Owen Wilson brings this up in the episode, the funniest thing is that as far as we know, it could be just a regular alligator pretending to be Loki. But then again, lying is the most Loki thing you can do. That, I think, might be my favorite line of the entire first season. So yeah, they're at the Void, and there's a giant cloud demon, and I'm just now realizing that if you haven't seen the show and you're watching this review, I sound like I'm on drugs. Stay with me. So there's a giant cloud dog. It's a giant cloud dog, and he eats the variants, and he kills them. So Loki and Sylvie, who stabs herself, I believe. Yeah. They're like, okay, if we get past the cloud dog, we'll get to the exact end of time, and we can figure out who's doing all this time wizard stuff, or this time police stuff, and we can just stab them and kill them. So they get past the dog. I don't think it's that important how they do it. They just do. And they get to the end of time, where they meet Kang the Conqueror, who didn't know he would show up in this show. It was announced a while back that he would be joining the MCU, and I didn't really care that much. I thought the next big Marvel villain just being another big bad guy after Thanos, who is the ultimate big bad guy, was kind of stupid. I was hoping for more of like a Secret Invasion Skrull kind of thing. It's revealed that he is the time god that controls everything. And episode 6 is also might be one of my favorite probably my favorite episode of the 6th episode. The one ran series, the finale's really good. He explains to the two Lokis that at the beginning of time in the 31st century, he discovered, and a bunch of other people from other timelines discovered, the multiverse, evolving timelines, all that jazz. So, like humans do, they break out into war. And it's a massive multiversal war. But then, he discovers the power of the big cloud dog and how it controls space and time, and he uses that to essentially conquer the multiverse, creating just like one singular timeline and the time police to enforce it. To stop from multiversal war breaking out again. So now, the Lokis are kind of in a weird position, and Kang points this out, where they can either kill Kang, kill him right there, which will send, because without someone to control the timeline, it will send out into all these branching paths, and then eventually, another multiversal war will break out, and then Kang will become king of the timeline, god of time once again, essentially restarting everything back into a loop. Or, they could take... Now, male Loki, the Loki we all know, thinks that it might be smart to take over the timeline. That way, because if you just kill him, it's just gonna rewind back to where it was before. But Sylvie, who can't trust any people, anyone, thinks that Loki is simply, wants more power, because that's what that version of Loki is all about. So eventually, she pushes him back to the time police station. That's what I'm going to be calling it. And then she stabs and kills Kang. Whoops! Because Loki's back at the time police station. And it cuts to Owen Wilson, who's back as well. And he's like, why? And he's all like, oh, why does he want us to let all these time? Why is he, meaning Kang, want us all to let these timelines go all virgining? This is interesting, and it kind of leads and is a little foreshadowing for what's going to happen like a couple seconds later, where Loki encounters Owen Wilson. Owen Wilson doesn't know who he is. Uh-oh. And then Loki's like, oh no, and then he sort of looks out, and he sees what used to be a big statue of the Timekeepers, now replaced with a big statue of Kang, showing that he has completed the loop, and Loki is essentially back where he started, end of season. That's really cool. So, remember when Owen Wilson was like, oh, why does he want us to have all the timelines? To let all the timelines, diverge. Well, Kang is completely fine with the multiverse drifting out into total war, because then he will just he will become the time god anyway. And Owen Wilson, and here's my theory, Owen Wilson doesn't know who Loki is, because in this newly looped time, Loki variants aren't of concern to the time police, because they aren't like a threat to Kang, because if they kill him, he just comes back into power. So Loki variants are of no threat, so they're not like on the time police's radar. And the Kang statue shows that he's completed the loop and he's back in power. So that is the quick plot synopsis. Do you have any concerns? You do? Just watch a YouTube video, man. I don't know what else. Oh, wait, you are. Just watch a better YouTube video, man. I don't know what else to tell you. So now let's get into actual review stuff. First off, the plot, really cool. Unlike WandaVision, it didn't spoil the entire mystery of the show in the halfway through. It perfectly gave us enough the amount of information we needed on like a weekly basis, while still keeping the cards close to their chest. So, I think there's a very well-written show. The acting is great. I like the new characters of Owen Wilson. He's great. Sylvie's great. Now, Kang is played. The actor puts in a really good performance, And overall, this was just a really good show. I am extremely interested. Circling back to the theme of like free will. I think the big thing that I'm gonna be thinking about till season 2 comes out is that when Sylvie killed Kang, was that her own free will, or is that also just all predetermined by Kang? And I think that's a really interesting conversation that I will be probably thinking about for like the next month, you know? So yeah, what does this really mean for the future of the MCU? Well, multiverses aren't just like a thing that is being like speculated. Like, it's pretty clear that that's where the MCU is going. It's pretty clear that's probably going to be how they introduce the X-Men and Deadpool and Fantastic Four, maybe all that jazz. And I really like that. So I guess the next big step, is probably going to be a massive, like, multi-universal war. And maybe that'll be the next Endgame or whatever. So yeah, that was really cool. It was a great show. I think I like this a little bit more than WandaVision. And I haven't seen Black Widow yet. Apparently it's just okay. And then there was also that part in, and then this makes me think about this makes me actively more interested. This makes me actively more interested in, future MCU movies. Loki almost acts as like a big advertisement for the future of the MCU, because I did not care about the third Ant-Man movie or the second Doctor Strange, but now that there's all this big multiversal thing, and Kang being the ultra god of all of reality, now I'm really interested in those movies. And then this also makes me think of movies that I didn't think necessarily were going to connect to the big future of the MCU, like with the upcoming Spider-Man movie. Remember when it was confirmed that the guy who played Dr. Octopus in the second Spider-Man movie will be coming back for the MCU version of Spider-Man, and that it was speculated that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire might show up in that movie. Now that's very much so possible, because this is the reveal of Thanos in Avengers 1 of this next stage of the MCU, in my opinion. This is the big thing that takes it from, that I think will take this section of the MCU from just like setting things up, and now we're just gonna start expanding and getting to the point where hopefully, I don't know, maybe the Avengers team up and they go do the I don't know, and that's so refreshing from Marvel. I think this is a great step for the MCU, and yeah, I thought I was done with this franchise, and they hooked me back in. 8 out of 9. I'm almost thinking 9 out of 9, but I think I'm going to lower it because I think I'm just a little bit too hyped because I just finished watching the show. But yeah, it's really good. I know I have some friends who are also kind of out of the MCU, and now I'm actively mad at them and want them to go get back into it. So yeah, 8 out of 9. Great series. Bye guys. See you next time.